I am so excited today because this is the first of a series of podcasts that I plan to do with authors and to talk about their book, how they went through the process, and to share their ideas from the book, the transformations that they provide in the book. And the first willing victim, the first wonderful guest, is the beautiful, fantabulous, fantastic, funny, and
Keep going.
smart.
Keep going.
I'm just going through. I've got my list you sent me earlier. The wonderful Susannah Simmons. And Susannah Simmons is the software adoption doctor, and she's written a wonderful book called The Mystery of the Lost Customer. Susannah, thank you for being my first victim.
It's my absolute pleasure, Debs. Happy to be here.
Okay, so it's going to be a really easy, relaxed, fun, as usual, maybe silly. There's a bit of silly in here. Deb in the room, there's going to be some silly. But we're just going to talk about your book, the process that you went through, some of the things that you learned, and what are the takeaways for other people. So either through the writing process, the reading, the book creation process, and of course, the massive transformations that you're offering in your book. So first of all, let's just talk about the book. Let's just do this first, because how beautiful is it? And it's just the best book colour in the world of books. I just love it. It's beautiful. So, Susannah, tell us about your book and what it's about.
Okay, so it's called The Mystery of the Lost Customer, and the subtitle is Could High Customer Satisfaction Be Silently Killing Your Business? And I think, interestingly, the title, which we may come on to later, wasn't immediately obvious to me, but it's landed really well, and I think quite a few people sort of do a double read of it, of what do you mean? Could high customer satisfaction be silently killing my business? I know surely high customer satisfaction is a good thing. And so the idea behind it is that, we can be so focused on metrics, and sort of, in the book I talk about the NPS, so Net Promoter Score, but actually, if you're not asking the right people at the right time, are you really getting a true picture of what's going on in terms of customer satisfaction? And it's there's an underlying theme about well-being. I'm very passionate about well-being, so I talk about well-being quite a lot. And so in the book, I talk about sort of this idea of focusing on something called business flourishing. So, money is obviously important in business, but actually what if we made it much more human-centered and looked at the well-being of our customers? But also a big theme in the book is the difference between customers and users. And so the book tells a story of, there's a couple of stories in there, really. There's Finn, but then there is Uma the user, Clem the customer, Sam the supplier. There's also Harry, the head of department. One of the ideas is that actually Sam the supplier has got feedback from Clem the customer, and that feedback's fantastic. But actually it turns out that Clem stops being a customer, and basically Sam is just completely kind of flawed because had no idea, which is kind of the title of one of the early chapters of I Had No Bleep Idea, because thought everything was good, thought the customer was happy, but it turned out that there was stuff going on behind the scenes that Sam hadn't seen. So it ends up with a bit of a manifesto of user well-being and some sort of things to the idea behind it is to be a bit sort of thought-provoking and get people to think about things slightly differently when it comes to customer experience, user experience, and there's also sort of elements of employee experience in there as well.
Wow, that was a big take through. I'm going to come back to a few points if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
That was a brilliant overview of the book and the big picture of what's going on. Okay, first of all, who's this book for? So I know you're called the Software Adoption Doctor. So is it just for software companies? Who's the book for?
Originally, your idea of one reader, and the one reader that I had in mind was a customer success leader in a software company originally. However, I I tested the ideas with the book with a community that I'm in, a fantastic community called Women in Customer Experience, and that audience are not software. Well, some of them are software based, but not all of them. So actually, I used a different example when I was testing kind of the story with the characters and so on, and so it then kind of became clear to me in the process of writing the book that actually it's not just software companies that do this. It's, you know, it's all companies that need this. So the book is not just for software companies, whilst that is kind of a niche that I work in. The book is suitable for business leaders, sort of sales, customer success. That also means small business owners that wear many hats. I know, and getting them to think about that kind of customer success hat that they may not put on very often, or may not even think about the fact that they have to wear it. And the other thing that really came out in the process of writing the book is that, you know, like you say, I call myself the software adoption doctor, and I'd always thought about that in the context of software companies. But if we take small business owners, freelance kind of trainers, consultants, coaches, I know you know this from personal experience, Debs, that actually there can be elements of software adoption within people's services, how they deliver them, how they provide their support and so on. That means that actually there are a lot of people that need to think about software adoption, even if their actual product or service isn't software, particularly with the way the world is going in terms of kind of how we deliver. You know, you just think about how customer service is delivered, like post-sale and that kind of thing. There's a lot of technology involved, and you really need to think about who's using that to make that successful. So yeah, there was all these other sort of themes that came out throughout the book that were kind of aha moments for me as much as anything.
I think for me, massive aha moments came out there, and reminded me again now when you're just talking about that, because even if we don't think we're a software company, we use software to onboard our clients, to communicate with our clients, to help them get the transformations. So at all of those points, we can actually let our clients down. Can I ask you? You said customer success hat. So small business owners, all of us, when we put our customer success hat on, what does that look like? How do we think differently?
So for me, I think for small business owners, there's a lot of talk around sort of sales and marketing, you know, and again, how we've got to be doing marketing and we've got to be doing sales as small businesses. And yeah, of course we do. However, and it's that whole idea of it's easier to kind of keep repeat customers and sell into existing customers than it is to find new customers. And obviously, and also, what you want is those existing customers or previous customers to be selling on your behalf, because that makes your life a lot easier. So that means you need to be doing a good job of delivering. So it doesn't stop at the sale. And it can be, I think it can be very easy for small business owners who are wearing many hats to go, right, I've done the marketing bit, or I've had someone do the marketing bit for me, I've done the sale, right, I'm just going to go into the doing, but not really taking that step back. So that customer success hat is about looking at that, you know, the typical word in the customer experience world is customer journeys, but I talk about, you know, the path to product adoption. And actually someone being really committed to the product and service that you offer. So, for example, in your book cohorts, that's someone who's really committed to that path, and they're using everything that you offer, and they're seeing it right through to the end, and actually ultimately then hopefully signing up to a follow-on service, because actually they go, well, I love Debs, I love what she does, it's amazing, and actually I can't do this on my own, I want that extra support to kind of get the most from my book and so on. So it's that whole sort of onboarding piece. It's, are you making it simple? Is it easy for people to get in touch with you when they've got a problem? And it's about testing those things on a regular basis, and then yeah, it's, you know, following up. So if someone does report a problem, it's about following up on those things and kind of resolving them, you know, because, you know, it's not necessarily the fact that somebody has a problem, because these things happen. It's more about how you respond to it. So that's all sort of that customer success, customer satisfaction, customer support piece that I feel that small business owners need to be thinking about, and doesn't always get thought about. It ends up being quite reactive rather than maybe doing a proactive approach to it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true, because, and certainly for me, it's like, oh gosh, I let the ball drop. Now I need to go back and fix things, and it's so much better if we can think ahead and iteratively get better rather than just keep dropping balls. Okay, but you kind of came on to another subject there, which I really, really love, which is this idea of well-being. And I know
Yeah.
you have a model for well-being, so do you want to tell us about that?
Yes. So I've always been interested in psychology, and I can't remember how many years ago I discovered positive psychology. And the idea behind positive psychology is, you know, a lot of psychology was based on, you know, um, sort of fixing things that are wrong with people, you know, people that have got kind of psychological issues, as it were. And positive psychology is about, like, well, what about everybody else? And actually, how do we sort of go from being okay to being better than okay? Um, and there's a kind of a leading figure in positive psychology called Martin Seligman. He's got a model called PERMA, and I was inspired by that. And you know, it's a good model, but I kind of identified some things that I thought were lacking in the context of what I call business flourishing. So he talks about human flourishing. So I was like, well, what if we talked about business flourishing, and you know, our business is really flourishing and the people within them flourishing? And so, yeah, the model expanded out to permeate. So the idea is that we permeate well-being throughout the organisation. So that's customers, users, suppliers, employees. And each letter stands for a different element. So P, for example, is positive emotion, which is our typical sort of experience. So those points in times, you know, are you getting the dopamine hit? Are you kind of getting that little high and that sort of buzz and those sorts of things? But happiness and well-being is more than that. And you don't have to be kind of, woo, yay, really, really happy to have a good sense of well-being. I won't go through the whole model, but you know, you've got things like motivation, relationships, engagement, trust, and so on in there. And then I suppose I call it a model, but I like to talk more about frameworks, because it gives freedom within that, because you don't necessarily need all of those elements all of the time. It's more about kind of using that as to help steer the thought process when making decisions of, well, you know, is that going to steer people in the right way, or you know, is it going to improve these different areas, or how does this change within our service or our product, or how we're delivering things, you know, is that going to improve someone's motivation? Is it going to build trust? Is it going to help with relationships? Those kind of things.
Wonderful. Okay, and I'm just finding it. And the Permeate framework is in the book. So if anybody wants to actually see all of those elements and how they can use them, it's in the book, which the book is called The Mystery of the Lost Customer. Okay, so fabulous. Okay, you've mentioned a word that one of my favourite words, which isn't chocolate, a few times today. Which is testing. So you've mentioned it a couple of times. You mentioned about testing the title. You mentioned it about testing the customer journey and iterating, and testing the path to product adoption. Okay, so testing. Talk to us about your book title and the testing that you did with the wonderful Wix community.
This time last year, a bit before this time last year, I wasn't writing the book that we've shared. When I came to you, I was writing a slightly different book. My intention was to write what you call a directions book. So much more of a how-to book, which was much more within my comfort zone, because that's the kind of writing that I've done. I've never really thought of myself as a writer either. So yeah, this time last year I was going on a bit of a process of kind of discovering what book I was writing, and actually within that we talked about the software adoption doctor, and at the time that kind of book that I thought I was writing, it was about bridging what I called the customer experience chasm. And I remember we were in a session and I got challenged about the fact that there was kind of this misalignment with the doctor versus this kind of quite engineered bridge and so on. And I was a bit like, yeah, but isn't that the point? Because, you know, there's the human kind of fluffy element, and then there's the quite practical element. Anyway, that was the first thing that I actually took out to the Wix community to get their feeling, and it was really nice, plus other sort of people in my circle. It was really nice to get the response that the software adoption doctor really resonated with people, and they liked it, and they liked some of the brand that I've got around it as well. So I was a bit like, oh, well, okay, I'm sticking with that. Where does that take me? And I suppose that was that kind of first thing about the well-being piece, and how do I move away from the bridge a little bit to focus more on the well-being bit. So then kind of jump forward a bit to sort of post-Christmas, I suppose, and I'd agreed to do this masterclass for Wix, and I realised that, well, actually kind of testing the water with the ideas for the book. So at that point it had become a different book, and this idea of kind of well-being, and these ideas, I suppose the analogies to do with the doctor was things like, so the idea of the silent killer had come in to play, and I talk about silent killers so I'm also a fitness coach for people that don't know me, and I talk about silent killers, so, you know, things like heart disease and those kind of things. And so it was translating that into sort of the business world. And then this whole idea of medicine, and the fact that, well, you know, you can go see your doctor and they can prescribe something, but that medicine isn't going to do any good if you don't take it. And I was thinking, well, that's the same thing with software and with products or services. You know, just because someone's buys something doesn't mean they're actually using it. And then it was kind of taking it a step further of, well, it's only really going to work, you know, that whole thing with antibiotics, and you have to take the full course. And actually, if you don't follow the full course, then whatever it is you're having treated can reoccur because you haven't done it properly. Yeah. And so that kind of evolved to that, oh yeah, it's only as good as if you use it effectively. So then kind of it came out around sort of building the story, and I don't really remember how I got to the kind of the characters in the story, but it was like, and there was a lot of imposter gremlins in there of, well, because this was a new, you know, this was much more I hate this expression, but thought leadership book, and there's some internal dialogue of, who am I as a thought leader, who am I to sort of be talking about these things. I know. So yeah, that masterclass then became me doing the first telling of the story of Uma, Clem and Sam, and kind of their interactions, and that allowed me to test that with some people who were in that target reader space. Unfortunately, it landed well. So yeah. Then it was a case of, okay, so the story works, the concept works, and so then it was, I suppose, full steam ahead of writing a business fiction book. Which, if you'd said to me this time last year that I was going to write a storybook with pictures, I probably would have gone, don't be ridiculous. Probably would have said, who's going to buy that? Because I did, you remember, I had a bit of a wobble of, well, isn't this a bit a bit childish. It doesn't feel very grown up. So then I had the book Who Moved My Cheese sat on my desk for a few months just to remind me. Someone wrote a book about some mice and poor, and I know that's a really good seller. So it's okay to write a book with characters and a bit of fiction. So.
And you kind of created like this whole world with Finn and Uma and Clem and Sam and Harry, and you kind of drew us all into this world. And what it means now, from my point of view, is that I can talk about the issues by using those characters rather than any actual real people. So so I don't have to be rude about anybody. I can just say, well, it's a bit Clemming, or it's a bit of an Uma moment. So I think what you did there, you gave us a vocabulary, a lexicon, a way of talking about the problem without it being personal. And I think that's one of my favourite bits about your book as well. Okay, so I'm going to take us back a little bit. So you mentioned a couple of things about this internal dialogue. Who am I to write a thought leadership book? Who am I to write a business storybook? I'm crazy. So how did you get over that internal dialogue? What was it? Was that the testing and that helped you get over that, or what happened?
Yes, so taking it out to those audiences and talking about it with people really, really helped. But also you and Dan. So Dan, my book writing buddy, I couldn't have done it without him either. So we've been having calls every week, pretty much since we started. And so on a Thursday morning, I would be having a wobble. And he's a fantastic cheerleader. So thank you, Dan, if you're watching this. And I suppose it's and also my husband Dom, dead supportive as well. It's just, I suppose, having those trusted people to go, oh no, I'm feeling like this, and just having them sort of boost me. But taking it out to the potential audience as well was a big help. And getting, once I did finally decide on a title, once I started putting that out there and saying, this is coming, having a positive response to that as well was really, it kind of helped get me to that finishing line, I suppose, of what, when we were in that final edits and design phase and things. And then obviously as the images started to come through in the cover, and you just sort of go, okay, yeah, I can believe in this. And actually, when I got the prototype, which is still sat right next to me, so I've got the finished one and the prototype. So there's the prototype. When I got that through, and I was actually dreading reading it a little bit, because I just thought, am I going to read it and go, what on earth was I thinking? I actually read it through and went, you know what, this is all right. I'm quite proud of this. And the fact that I've got potentially 2 other books in mind that follow on from it kind of, I suppose, suggests that it wasn't a bad process. I quite enjoyed it, and there's more in there. So
yeah, and I think I kind of like you've identified there the steps, and the way I think about it is that each step there is like a moment of panic, at least one, as you're going through the idea, coming up with the idea. Then you're coming up with the writing, and then you're getting it tested by other people, and then you see the prototype and you get some production, and then you go out into the wide world, and the wild world. And each of those, there's a moment where you kind of like, you can pull back, or you can go like, yeah, actually, I'm going to stop now, or meh. And I think having Dan on your side and having a buddy, a writing buddy, or a group of writing buddies, I think is the only way to get through that process, because otherwise you go into your own head and you get quite echo chambery.
Yeah, and I have to say, actually, just remembered there with the beta readers, there was one person who I knew I would potentially sort of. I've never been the best with feedback. I'm not going to lie. I kind of learning over the years not to sort of take it personally, and actually feedback is a gift and you don't have to act on it and so on. And I knew that this one person would definitely give some really good feedback, and which is why I asked them to be a beta reader. But I knew that there would be stuff in there that I'd have to go, right, okay, let's just sort of read it and come back to it. But then one of my other beta readers I knew would, whilst would give valuable feedback and suggestions, was very much a cheerleader of mine anyway. And actually she put some very lovely kind of little comments in there and gave me a boost. And one of the tips for anybody that is writing the book is, when you get that feedback, is and I know other people in your groups have done the same and have found the same experience of, I did start kind of looking at it as it came in, and it's like, no, put it to one side, just sit down, look at it all in one go, and then walk away from it and then come back to it, because it can be tough, because you've put a lot of time and energy into writing this thing, to then have people potentially not rip it apart, but kind of go, and then there is that sense of, you think you've got so far, and then you get the feedback and you go, I know mine I knew needed work anyway, but it was a case of, oh, I thought I'd been finished, but actually I haven't. So yeah.
That's a really good point, and I think the idea of getting feedback, beta readers, it's so important, and it always improves a book. But there is a moment where that the beta reader feedback. So first, you've got to choose your beta readers really carefully, and then once you've chosen them really carefully, you actually do want the cheerleader in your gang, and you do want the person who's going to be give you the harshest feedback, and you do want that nice variety. But then you have to remember, even the loveliest person in the whole world has their own biases and their own agenda and their own reason, and they're going to give feedback from there, which is what we want. We actually want that, and so like you said, it's a gift, and you can choose to accept that gift or not. But it is I always think about, I have to put my big girl pants on when I get my beta reader feedback. I have to put my big girl pants on, take a deep breath, and do it all in one go, rather than as it comes in, because it's very disruptive if you do it when it comes in.
And I think the other thing is to remember that at the end of the day, it's your book.
Yes.
And I remember saying that to my husband Dom a couple of times when I was maybe sort of a bit of feedback or trying to make a decision about something, and then it was just like, hang on a minute, this is my book.
Yeah.
So okay, I know someone might be suggesting that this would be a better thing to do, but actually I was like, no, it's my book, so I'm going to make a decision to do it. And that way, but it's making that informed choice, isn't it? Not kind of doing it alone and completely ignoring sort of the good practice stuff, but at the same time, there are some things that you can go, well, actually, that's not going to have a huge impact on the success or the production of the book or anything, and it allows it to be very much your own. And things like the graphics and things in my book, you were obviously very supportive of me having those anyway, but that very definitely makes it my book.
Yes.
So having those in there was really important to me.
Yeah. Your book is gorgeous. It's absolutely beautiful, and I love all the images, and I kind of like fairly frequently have a little zip through and have a look at them myself. Okay, right. So you've gone through this process of writing the book. It took us about a year, I think, in total. Yep. What did you enjoy the most about going through this process?
Learning and relearning some stuff about myself. The camaraderie has been amazing. It's been so much fun. I think also, going back to the learning about myself, sort of unlearning some things as well. I think, we've all got stories that we tell ourselves, and things that have made us who we are, and we sometimes need to kind of unpick some of that. And for me, I've always had this thing in my head of, English was always my worst subject at school. And so I think I've sort of held on to that a bit, in terms of that means I can't write. and my grammar's not the best and so on, but that doesn't matter because we had Lisa. She's amazing. Sorry, Lisa. Quite a lot of work to do with mine. But I think, and what was really interesting is that Dan always used to say to me, well, we'll go for a walk, because actually that was where the story came from. That reminds me now, that was where the original sort of story of Uma and Clem and Sam, it was when I went for a walk. So he'd say to me, we'll go do that walk again. Or do it as a presentation, because actually when I put stuff down as a slide deck and I did the drawings, that's when it all sort of came to life. So really learning kind of what works, and it's okay to do it your way, which is what I talk about with people all of the time anyway. But sometimes you don't always practice what you preach, do you? And sometimes you need your own reminder. So I do kind of look back now though, and I have been talking to a couple of people recently, and I feel like I must have been mad, because it wasn't the only thing I took on about a year ago. And so it's been a good year. It's been quite a tough year, but it's been a good one.
Yeah. You did take on a lot all at the same time, but you kept at it, and that was the most important thing. And I think, like from most of us writing books, anybody who's writing a book, or anybody who's creating anything, there are those dips and there's ups and the dips, and you've got to just keep going through it. So camaraderie, I think, is one of the key points for me as well. Okay. Has your book made a difference to your business so far? Has anything changed?
Yes. It's given me something, I suppose, to talk about, and almost to hang things off. I suppose the launch of the book has helped me to connect with new people. And so in terms of kind of connections and conversations that I'm having, those have increased as a result of having the book. It's really nice to be able to send people a copy of the book. So I had a call with someone last week, and it was just really nice to be able to say, well, actually, I'll send you a copy of the book. And the thing for me is that I think there's this tendency for people to sort of say, my dad did this. He's like, oh, well, how's it going? How many copies have you sold? I was like, well, Dad, it's not really about that. I didn't write it to become a millionaire off writing a book, because that would be quite hard. It's not about how much money I'm going to make off selling the book. The book is so much more than that. And it does give me, I love the idea of lumpy mail. And sending something out in the post. And I'd had ideas in the past about things that I could send, but it's almost some of the things that you can send. So I had this idea about the stress toys, but one shaped like a tablet, like a tablet, like a paracetamol type tablet. With kind of playing on the theme of the software adoption doctor, and kind of but it's just some kind of rubbish that you send in the post that might sit on someone's desk that doesn't really add any value, and it trying to be sort of more sustainable and so on. It's like, well, I'm using stuff to send something out that isn't really something that someone's asked for or needs. So by having a book as lumpy mail, that's very different. Receiving a book for free in the post that could actually add value to someone and their business feels so much more powerful and worth doing, I suppose. So that's the other thing, which is why I've got a box of them sat behind me.
It's the difference between sending a gimmick, which is like or a pen or something. It's gimmicky, it's lovely, but it's a bit gimmicky. And actually something like you say that can actually transform, add value, help them do something completely different or think differently, because obviously this is a book to help people think better. So yeah, I think it's great, and I love the idea of lumpy mail. It's a great term.
And I think that there's part of me, again, you know, with those imposter gremlins and the kind of the ego of, well, oh God, does that seem a little bit presumptuous of, look, you know, read my fantastic book, but it's not about that. You're not doing it from a place of that. It's a case of trying to start a conversation or contribute to a conversation. I know, and actually, like, I'm actually really interested to hear what people think, and I'm happy. Much as I like harmony, you know, I'm very much like, you know, a peacekeeper and stuff. I'm quite happy to have, you know, conversations about the book and in differences of opinion and so on. And I know, because it's not to say, I'm not trying to say that it's my way or the highway, and there's only one way to think. It's just like, let's have a slightly different perspective on these things, and let's look at things from different angles, and let's explore things, and let's all just get better at this stuff, whatever that looks like for each of us in our own businesses.
I think that's brilliant, and in the same way that you learned and had value from Seligman's perma, and then expanded that, other people giving you feedback on what you've created will expand that, and so we're all just building on the shoulders of giants, really, aren't we?
Yeah.
And now you've put something out in the world that other people can build on. I think that is absolutely wonderful. Okay, right, let's start rounding this up. What are your plans for your book? What are you going to do with it? Where will we see you and it?
So, well, some people will be receiving a copy in the mail.
Lumpy.
Yeah, lumpy mail. So there'll be that. And I'll continue to sort of share it with people that kind of show an interest in it. The really nice thing with it, actually, you're going back to the whole thing about marketing and awareness of what I do. I've got, and you're obviously all about this around assets. I've got so much now that's already kind of written to now put sort of snippets and bits out there sort of on social media and so on, and kind of do other content. So yeah, I will be doing that over the coming months and sharing elements. And it's funny, actually, just how many different examples these days I now pick up on in terms of customers and users, and I can always find one that resonates with people, and then I obviously get some back from other people, so that's really nice. And actually, I've just remembered something, because one of the videos I shared as an example of my family, so when my in-laws and the situation to do with the car and so on, and I was talking to my mother-in-law about that on the weekend, and she said, "Oh, well, I read your book." And so she bought the Kindle version and the paperback version, and she read the paperback version. And she said, yeah, and I really understood it, and it made a lot of sense. And then she'd seen another video that I'd done, again about a car. This was about buying an electric car. And she said, oh, and I really resonated with that. So then I explained that, actually, ask for forgiveness, not permission. By the way, I did put a video out into the world that talked about the whole family, and there is a picture of the whole family out on the interweb. And she's like, oh, no, that's fine. She's like, oh, yeah, that really makes sense, doesn't it? And so I decided, you can add in, if you can, what is it you say about, if you can explain it to, or a 5-year-old can understand it.
12-year-old to a 10-year-old, but it's whatever. We need to be able to do the Chinese whiz-buzz type idea of moving the idea on.
Yeah, so, well, now you can add, if a late 70s-year-old woman can explain it to a similarly aged husband, then you're winning as well. So
fantastic. Yeah. Okay,
sorry,
so
that's a bit of a tangent then.
No, but it was a great tangent, because the story and your videos are brilliant, because they do bring the whole book to light. So if people can watch your videos, that would be fabulous. Which brings us on to the final question, which is from the book, or from everything that you're working on at the moment, what is your final message for readers of the book, or for people that are thinking about the issue of user and losing their customers and where they might be going and how they might want to keep them. What's your final message?
I think my overarching message today is take a step back and look for what's not being said and what you might be missing. So think beyond kind of the customer or even the user that you speak to most. Who are the people that you're not hearing from, or you're assuming are okay? Because those might be potential silent killers.
Yeah, that's a brilliant final thought, because I tend to for all the software companies that I bought from recently, I tend to buy year-long software, and if I haven't used it within that last few months, then you're not going to get my repeat customer. So so users versus customers. Okay, so how can people get your book? How can they contact you? What's the best way for people to get more information from you, Susannah?
So they can contact me via LinkedIn. And I'd love people to reach out and connect with me. And there's also a link if anyone wants a virtual coffee. Always happy to talk. And there's also a link on there for my book, but also you can go on to Amazon and search for The Mystery of the Lost Customer, and it will be there to buy.
And you'll be able to get your business fable about how you're going to improve customer well-being rather than lose your customers.
Yeah.
By accident. Fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you for being honest and open about your journey and about imposter when it arrived. Is there anything else you want to say, or shall we finish it there?
No, I think that's it. I suppose the only other thing I would say is that if you've been thinking about writing a book, do it and speak to Debs. Do it alone.
That's the payback for my long list of wonderful adjectives at the beginning. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you, Susannah. Speak to you soon.
Yeah,
Ciao.
thanks, Debs.
Bye.
Bye.